They say the desert whispers. Not just the wind sifting through sand and rock, but the desert itself. Whispers of ancient battles, of fallen empires, of endless, grinding conflict. But in Afghanistan, in that desolate, sun-baked landscape, it's not whispers you hear. It's a low hum. A vibration in the air, in the very ground beneath your boots, that never quite goes away. It's the hum of forgotten promises. Of men driven to madness. Of an unseen enemy, always watching, always waiting. And when you're out there, in the dust and the heat, day after grinding day, patrolling the same roads, manning the same checkpoints, that hum starts to sound less like the desert, and more like a warning. A countdown. To something far worse than a bullet. To something that will claw its way out of the shadows, and take a piece of your soul, leaving you with nothing but the echoes of your own screams. Welcome, my friends, to the checkpoints, to hell.
Subscribe to this channel, like and share this video.
My name is Miller. Or it was. Names tend to lose their meaning out there. We arrived, a fresh batch of wide-eyed recruits, full of the usual patriotic fervor. Toughened by training, but utterly unprepared for the reality. They flew us in, dropping us like seeds into a barren field, expected to bloom. We landed at this outpost, a collection of HESCO barriers and sandbags baking under a relentless sun. Sergeant Riley, a man whose face was already etched with the weariness of 1,000 forgotten sunsets, greeted us with a grunt. "Welcome to Fort Nowhere, gentlemen," he'd rasped, his eyes the color of dried blood. "Your new home. Try not to die." He said it with a smirk, but there was no humor in his eyes. Only a profound, suffocating emptiness. Our days became a monotonous, terrifying loop. Patrols down dusty roads, the threat of an IED always a breath away. Hours spent manning the checkpoints, squinting into the glare, trying to read the faces of the villagers passing through. Every car, every cart, every person was a potential threat. A moment of inattention could mean everything. The sun beat down, turning the air into a shimmering mirage. The nights were worse. The darkness swallowed everything, making the familiar shapes of the outpost dissolve into formless shadows. That hum I told you about? It intensified at night. It wasn't the sound of the generators, or the wind. It was something deeper. Something, alive. It started with Private Davies. Young kid, barely out of high school. Quiet. Always sketching in a small notebook he carried. One morning, he just wasn't there. His bunk was empty. His gear, neatly stowed. No note. No trace. Just, gone. Sergeant Riley ran the usual checks, grilled everyone. Nothing. Command chalked it up to desertion, a common enough story. But Davies? He wasn't the type. And his rifle was still there. No soldier deserts without their weapon. A chill ran through us, colder than any desert night. It was the kind of chill that whispers, "You're next." We started hearing things from the local villagers during our patrols. Not directly, of course. They spoke in hushed tones, averted their eyes when we tried to question them. But snippets reached us through our interpreters. Stories of jinn, of spirits that steal men in the night. Old wives' tales, we told ourselves. Superstition. But then one of the interpreters, a stoic old man named Khalid, caught my eye one day. His face was pale, his hands trembling. He muttered something in Dari that the others quickly shushed. When I pressed him, he just shook his head, his eyes wide with an ancient terror. "The desert takes what it wants, soldier," he whispered, his voice barely audible. A week after Davies vanished, it was Private Rodriguez. He was on watch at Checkpoint Alpha, the furthest and most isolated. We heard his frantic shouts over the radio, garbled and choked with fear. "Something's out here. It's watching me." Then, silence. We scrambled, but by the time we reached the checkpoint, it was empty. Rodriguez was gone. His rifle, leaning against the sandbags. But this time there was a message. Scratched into the dusty glass of the observation mirror, scrawled with a desperate, trembling finger, were 2 words. Don't sleep. The hum became a presence. It wasn't just a sound anymore, it was a feeling. A pressure behind your eyes. A constant itch under your skin. We started seeing things. Flickers of movement in our peripheral vision. Shadows that stretched too long, or moved too fast. Sergeant Riley, the unshakable rock, started talking to himself. About the whispers from the sand, about the eyes watching from the hills. We tried to laugh it off, but the fear was contagious. It festered, growing stronger with each passing, sleepless night. The sand, they said, could sing. And its song was a dirge for the living. Then, a discovery. Not far from Checkpoint Alpha, half buried in a drift of sand, was Davies. Or what was left of him. His uniform was torn, his skin desiccated and leathery, like ancient parchment. But it wasn't the decomposition that sent a jolt of ice through my veins. It was his eyes. They were wide open, staring blankly at the sky, but filled with a terror that was somehow still fresh. And etched onto his forehead, as if branded by some invisible fire, were those 2 words again. Don't sleep. He hadn't just died. He had been returned. A message. A warning. We were trapped. Isolated. No one believed our stories of desert spirits and returning dead. They just saw exhausted, hallucinating soldiers. But we knew. We felt the presence pressing in. The hum was everywhere now, inside our heads, making our teeth ache. The faces of the villagers, once wary, now held a strange, knowing pity. They understood. We were just another offering to the desert. Another soul to be claimed. And as the sun began to dip below the horizon on my last night at that cursed outpost, casting long, skeletal shadows across the sandbags, I heard it clearly. The hum. But this time, it had words. My name. Whispered from the darkness. A chill that wasn't from the desert wind, but from the depths of a primal, inescapable fear, gripped me. I knew then that the checkpoints to hell weren't just places on a map. They were milestones on a journey. A journey into the darkest parts of your own mind, where the real monsters lie in wait. And once you stepped onto that path, there was no turning back. Only the dust. And the hum. And the waiting, for your turn.